All right, we're live.
We are live.
I like when we start off with music. What happened to our music? And you're on, Theo.
Oh, lift every voice and sing. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. Till earth and heaven. Not gonna do it. Ring with the harmonies. I'm out.
Of liberty. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. Welcome to 7 Generations Black, the podcast hour to equip and inform, clear your lens, and present a new perspective. The one and only Jay Wilson, Soul, Lethal, Jice Johnson, and of course, I'm your host, Shay J. Due to the effects of COVID-19, we seemed that it was imperative that we came together as a collective and delivered a message to our community. So this conversation is a much needed conversation. We're going to show you how to look at things a little bit differently through a 7-generational lens. It might challenge your mindset a little bit, but I trust that you will learn so much from this podcast. So do me a favor, share out the link right now, tag a friend, tell them to join you in a watch party because the conversation is going to get good. But first, I have to hit you with a red pill alert.
Uh-oh.
Red pill. Are you guys ready?
Man.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
This is your last chance. This is your opportunity. After this, there is no turning back. You can stop listening and tune out now. If you do, the story ends. And you wake up in your bed and you believe, well, whatever it is you want. However, if you take this 7 generations red pill, you stay here with us in a liberatory conversation and discussion. And we show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. As always, the choice is yours. Welcome to 7 Generations Black. Now let me introduce you to my amazing panel. Give it up for the one and only Theo E.J. Wilson of Shop Talk Live. Woo, 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 woo. Like, the one and only Lethal. Lethal of the Honorable Protector Initiative.
Can y'all see that?
Brother?
He said,
I like that.
Not today, colonizer.
That's dope. Colonizer. My guy, H. Soul of the Righteous Rage Institute. What up, H? And of course, my girl, Jice Johnson of the Black Business Initiative.
What's up?
Woo. If you're here with us,
y'all are a mess.
This is the conversation. This is it. So today we're going to dig into how we are literally watching the greatest transfer of wealth. And I know you guys are saying, like, did they make this up? No, this is real. We're literally in the moment of the greatest transfer of wealth, and we're going to dig into that. And when I was looking at unemployment rates, and I was trying to dig into this, and I wanted to understand what was really happening. And one of the things that came across is that right now our nation is at a 13.3 deficit on unemployment rate. And then you look at the U.S. billionaires, they have increased to 565 billion. These dates are just from March 18th to June 4th. So when you look at it, the rich keep getting richer, right. And the poor, they get poorer. Let's jump into the conversation. Let's talk about the real resources, what's really available, and not what they just keep telling us is available. Guys, I have to kick it off with you. This is something that I know you're passionate about. We talk about it all the time. You're our economic guru. Let's jump in.
Yo, so
tell me,
what is it that we're looking at? I'm trying to pull back some on this conversation. I'm not going to really try and pull back, but I'm at least trying to pull back initially because, I went live last night and I was talking about, some of the things that are going on. Are y'all hearing the echo from me?
Who's got their Facebook going to right now?
Nobody. I don't know why I'm having an echo. I had an echo earlier and I was trying to figure out why it was, and I don't know. Okay. Hopefully it's not echoing too bad. But literally when we were in the tech, okay. Hopefully y'all can hear me without an echo. We good right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So I went live last night and I tried to like kind of pull back a little bit so that I could save some of this conversation for today, because we are literally witnessing what is arguably the largest wealth transfer potentially in history, right? And so arguably, not arguably, the largest wealth transfer in any sort of recent U.S. history, but arguably, I would say in the world. But that's kind of where the conversation is going right now in terms of what's happening and how they are moving these resources. Now, I want to talk about from the beginning, but I guess the question was around the resources. So I'll start with this. The Black community is known to be consumers, right? And I don't think this is a secret to anybody. I don't even think that this is a, what is it called? A stereotype, right? Like, we certainly consume. And oftentimes we consume things that are not assets, or they're not resource-based. And when that happens, what we're seeing right now is that we're going to end up being left behind in a way that we may not be able to come back from. So when we start thinking about resources, I think we need to be thinking about what type of resources it is that we need to actually be accumulating. We need to understand what a resource is, what an asset is, and begin to start kind of putting some of those pieces together. So I think Shay was having a little issue with her internet. When she comes back up, I'll add her back in. But yeah, you had a thought, Theo?
Yeah, I wonder if wealth transfer is the correct word, or is it a jack move? I'm not sure which is the best terminology for it, but where I'm from, there was an album called How to Rob, and I believe that How to Rob may be efficient to describe the situations, because when we talk about white collar crime, financial manipulation, the default modes that the economy is set on, we're talking about crimes so big, there aren't really even laws against them yet. You know, we saw a micro version of this when the economy collapsed in 2008. And we saw that there were people who lost everything at the hands of their own bosses. You had financial crimes. You had a shadow market of mortgage default swap and other financial instruments betting on the consumer not paying back their mortgages, creating a shadow market the size of $58 trillion. This was in 2008, right? A market like that is doomed to collapse. You simply don't have enough capital damn near in the world to have that be a sustainable hustle, a Ponzi scheme, if you will. We are all bought into this thing. And one of the things that was said, and I might have mentioned this earlier, the rich do keep getting richer because of the way that the technology of money itself is designed. Right. Money, if you have, can accumulate. Money, if you don't have enough, will evaporate. It's what it is. And so the wealthy, the 1%, and really the 1/10 of 1%, just can you imagine this? They have over 22% of the new income earned in the country before this crisis, before coronavirus collapse happened, right? And it accumulates interest on itself. And it's actually accumulating interest so fast that it's expanding faster than the economy itself. And that money is coming from nowhere else but the bottom. So it doesn't surprise me, especially when the earning potential of, we're looking at of 45 million Americans now? 45 million Americans are now unemployed. Somebody got that money, and it was everybody who we were using to sustain ourselves during COVID-19. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's a jack move. I think we need to just call it a jack move because they did it without a pistol to your head. Instead, they put a virus to your temple. That's what they did.
Well, so you bring up an interesting point, because I actually think that this has been going on long before this. And then this kind of ties back into whether or not this is, the pandemic, as they're saying, or if this is conspiracy or whatever the case might be, right? And at times, one thing we have to recognize is that this is a global economy. We're not coming back from that. It's always really been a global economy. I mean, the slave trade was across, the diaspora or whatever was a global situation, right? But we are connected in a way, obviously, that we have not been in previous generations in that global space, right? And so even from that perspective, I think it's important for us to acknowledge. Hopefully, Shay will be able to actually connect back here. But I think even in that space, it's important for us to acknowledge that even in conspiracies, it doesn't mean that there are not multiple countries or whatever being involved, right? So whatever that looks like, right? But that being said, I want to touch on something because I don't think this started, or the way that I've seen this, I started talking about this wealth transfer. I think that's your phone, Shay.
So mute it. If you're not on, you got to mute her, Shay, because there's an echo.
All right, so I think she's frozen again. Okay. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till she get that together. So I actually started talking about this when I started looking at opportunity zones. I want to look at that. I want to start kind of going back to that, right? Because first of all, if you look at some things or if you read some books, and I don't want to make it seem like I've read every book or anything like that, right? But I just want to acknowledge this, right? There's these changes in industry, right? So you have, resources, or you have this resource grab, then you move into the industrial, realm, right? Then you move into, you can probably help me fill in that history, but essentially we're now in the technology age, right? Yeah. And I feel like it's Dr. Claude Anderson's book. Don't quote me on that. It may be another book, but essentially we're coming back around to where resources are going to be a huge thing, right? So now it's going to be coming back to controlling natural resources, coming back to controlling production, and coming back to controlling movement. And so just as an example, like when we talk about creating our own state or having our own, system here on American soil, right? So either one, we have to remove it from being American soil, which means we have to be prepared to go against the United States of America in war, in a land grab. I don't think we're ready for that battle. Then you look at, let's say, the indigenous people of this country who were here prior, right? And they are landlocked. So whenever they want to make any moves, or why they can't actually grow an economy, even though they essentially have some autonomy from the United States, they can't grow their economy because they are landlocked. So what port is the United States giving us? Are they giving us Washington? Are they giving us, California, Miami? I mean, what, are they giving us Maine? Like, what are they giving us that gives us access to the rest of the world, right? So when we're thinking about resources, like think about the things that are now like not owned. Like you can buy your house, but then do you own the minerals under your house, right? You have your space, right? And then like, do you own the airspace? Like they're literally commoditizing every single piece of actual life: air, water, food, the actual land that we live on. So when we start thinking about what kind of resources it is that we need to be looking at, like we need to be thinking about the resources that it takes for us to actually live, where we don't have to come and go through somebody else. So the first place that I started seeing this was in the opportunity zone. So I'm thinking, you guys have already bought up all of this space. You've already developed all of this space. And now you want to start making investments inside of the Black communities, essentially, or inside of poor communities, right? Inside of rural communities. So essentially you want to develop all the rest of any and everything that you could possibly develop. And you want to do that with all these tax breaks, right? Like generations long of a tax break. So that was the first time that my ears really started perking up to say, I think they're looking at some form of a land grab right now, and using tax dollars to be able to essentially finance that. We already knew that the baby boomers were getting ready to transfer wealth. So if you look up, like, quote, the wealth transfer, you can already find information about that, because the last of the boomers are getting ready to retire. So they were already talking about wealth that was getting ready to transfer. But you can also tie that into the fact that millennials are kind of like the worst generation off right now, right? So millennials are in debt like never before. They have wage gaps like never before. They have all these other issues that have compiled on top of them. So they haven't been able to amass wealth at the same rate that their parents did. So you already saw that there were baby boomers that were getting ready to start transferring wealth, but now you need to add in the tax breaks, right? So again, if you go back to how this country started, or really when the development started kicking up in the country, the policies allowed for government dollars to be poured into these developments. So essentially, that's You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of what we're seeing again, starting with the opportunity zones that have been being talked about for the last couple of years.
Jice, could you break down what opportunity zones are? Could you kind of deconstruct that for somebody who probably hasn't heard that they may even live in an opportunity zone? Can you please do that for us?
So I'm not the authoritative voice on opportunity zones, but the general idea of the opportunity zone is you have these communities that have not had investment. So you have hoods, you have ghettos, you have rural communities that don't have any real investment that has been placed into them, right? So first of all, that's just our hood. So yeah, we don't own the hood, but at the same time, there's been no investment in the hood, which means these properties are at they're at the all-time lowest value. So when we start looking at this kind of perfect storm, you have stocks that are at the highest value that they've ever been, right? You have a whole technological age. So now things are beginning to shift. And what you have is, Mary said the right thing, right? It was the start of, like, not the start, but it was how it was like the next layer of gentrification. So you come in and you infuse things where you just have white people moving in, but now what you're adding in is the development. So white people coming in and moving into like low income neighborhoods, driving up the value of homes, making the police come in, clear out crime, cleaning up the streets, doing all of these things is like one layer of that gentrification. What opportunity zones did was basically start adding on to the second layer to say big dollars, big investors, big time developers can start coming in here and get tax breaks to develop these rural areas, to start coming through and demolishing neighborhoods, demolishing out the old, clearing out everything old and building up the new things, and then building them up in a way that they got tax breaks for doing so. And they made it seem like this is an opportunity for people to come in and invest in these neighborhoods, but no one was in the position to invest in the neighborhoods except for the rich white folks. So who was investing in neighborhoods? It's a deal, right? But it's still an unattainable deal. So you have somebody like Nipsey Hussle and his business partner who talked about, the opportunity zone that they were investing in, but they still invested millions of dollars. It's not like they came up with a couple $1,000s and made it happen. They were still investing millions of dollars into that space. It was just still at a discount and with a tax break. So I hope that.
Jice, I really appreciate what you're doing, because with your Black Business Initiative, you've had to understand the technology of money. And I don't think that we understand money as technology. We think that money is neutral, and it's not. Money comes into existence in a scarcity context. As we say, money doesn't grow on trees. And it also comes into existence with interest attached to it. And it comes into existence with the whole system of investment, of accumulation, of laws that have everything to do with making more money for those who already have it. And this is why financial education is so important, because a lot of us do not understand the technology that's in our pockets and how it can be used for us or against us, and how far away we are from actually being able to compete on certain levels. A great book to look at when it comes to opportunity zones, when it comes to the development of neighborhoods, when it comes to the wealth and the racism that was implied in creating both the suburbs and the ghettos, is a book called The Color of Law by Rosenstein, The Color of Law. And it goes into the history of how certain neighborhoods were developed and certain neighborhoods were underdeveloped, and how recently this happened. When I talked earlier about these mortgage default swipes, these predatory loans, we heard about these predatory loans, Black folks getting underwater on their houses, taking out loans way too big for the income and whatnot, and them knowing that this was going to happen. This was to create the opportunity zones that you see before you today. And one of the mindsets that is behind this technology is they think long term. They think long damn term. The first meeting I ever went to about the quote redevelopment of 5 Points was in 1997. A brother named Kalonji Patterson, who was a former Black Panther, was at the meeting and one of the only Black faces there. And we saw what was going. They planned this 10 to 12 years in advance. You see what I'm saying? And it's something that we don't understand. I I wonder, and maybe somebody can feel this question. Do we need to create a no financial system altogether? Because when you look at how much money we're at deficit to try to compete in the game as it's designed right now, will have us forever at a disadvantage. We need to start looking at this as malleable. Money is just a technology, and it serves a small bit of its users. Perhaps we need to start from the ground up and come up with a brand new technology that we all can work to begin with. And because these cats is way ahead on this shit, man. I don't want to seem hopeless, but perhaps the hope is in not competing, but creating what Soul said last time, a new model that makes the old model obsolete. Is that feasible here? Is anybody even speaking of that?
So let me jump in here real quick for a second, right? Before we get too far along, right? Shout out to Jice for the article. You know what I'm saying? Big up, sis.
Yeah.
I think that before we can even begin to attempt to educate, our brothers and sisters on this issue of wealth transfer, right? We need to have a conversation about, the meaning of some words that I've heard Jice and Theo mention before, right? Those two words that are very important, I think, are community and live, right? So tell me if I'm wrong. A community, right? I'm giving you the definition for what a community is. A community is a unified body of individuals with common social, economic, and political interests who live in a particular area, right? To live means to remain alive, to be alive, to have life, to continue.
Say it again, Lethal. A community is what?
A community is a unified body of individuals with common social, political, and economic interests who live in a particular area. That's what a community is.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? Looking at how even in what we can call the hoods or the burbs or anything of that nature, I don't think that we understand that we don't have a true community even amongst ourselves. We don't. And to accomplish and or to achieve some of the things that we've been talking about here, we have to first move toward understanding that we need to have similar social or common social, political, and economic interests. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you take a look at all the advancements that we've made as a people, right? They stem from the realm of social, right? Being allowed to gain access to golf clubs, being allowed to gain access to ride in the front of the bus as opposed to the back of the bus. You understand what I'm saying? But I think that to some degree, there was a misstep and a misunderstanding that we needed to take advantage politically and economically, right, of the placement and access that our social gains earned us. And I don't think we really ever understood that and or that we did that. Now, there's a separate definition, right? I spoke about living, right? When a police officer is able to come into your community where you live in your home, you understand what I'm saying? And we see this on a consistent basis, right? You're not able to remain alive. You're not able to live. You understand what I'm saying? That is an impossibility. And we've experienced this for far too long, right? And so when we talk about the transference of wealth, right? Now we need to also, I think, build as a building block, get our people to understand that in order to take advantage of the transfer of wealth or to prevent the transference of wealth, right? So that we're always on the bottom and those who are on the top are always on the top of this pyramid, right? I think we need to understand that we need to have a movement getting us towards a true community where we are actually able to live, right? Because living is an unalienable right. And what does that word mean? It means not able to be transferred. You understand what I'm saying? It means not able to be taken away. So in other words, even if it's yours, your unalienable right, you can't transfer it, you can't give it to someone, and no one can take it from you. You understand what I'm saying? And when we talk about this wealth transfer, what we're really getting at is the contract, right? Theo, you spoke about this plenty of times, right? The contract between us as citizens of this country, right? And the government, because the government is supposed to protect all of our unalienable rights, rights that we are entitled to simply from being born. And I think that before we can even begin to talk about understanding the transference of wealth, right? This is just my opinion, right? I'm not a scientist on this, social scientist or anything of this nature, right? But I think that when we start talking about the transference of wealth, we have to let our people know that we need to work towards building true communities where all of us come to an agreement, right, on what our social, political, and economic interests are.
Whew. Am I here?
You're here.
Hey guys. Hey. I don't know what's been said so far. Excuse me. When we're talking about great things, my internet shuts down. It's a part of the conspiracy theory. It doesn't want me to be great. So now I'm just going to connect on my phone and we're going to play it from here. Lethal, I think you touched on something that was so huge of the sense of what community looks like and how do we restructure that, because so many times we don't have the same goals. We're not in the same political realm. We're just looking at now with elections coming up. There's no real Black leadership telling us what our demands should be, how we should vote, the way we should go. I mean, that's huge. So I would love for you to jump in there and tell us, where does these first steps start in building community so we can start to talk about what this wealth transfer looks like?
If I would,
Hey, so go ahead, Sol. Jump in, Sol.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm going to do that, Shay. I'm also going to touch on something that Theo said earlier as well. If we're to follow the definition that our ancestors would say of what we should be pursuing first, Kwame Nkrumah, which was the first president of liberated Ghana, said that seek ye first the political kingdom, and all things will be rewarded unto you after then, right? And what he meant by that is that to even buy Black, right, to even talk about Africa, to even talk about Pan-Africanism, that's a political statement. You can't even start talking about economics until you politically agree that that you're Black people, that Black people need their own, right? So before you even start talking about whether you're what type of economic system you want to set up, first of all, you have to be politically aligned. Secondly, to Theo's point around starting over again, that is absolutely necessary, and it's been attempted within all of our lifetimes. Many people may or may not remember there was a man called Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was the head of the African Union. Yes, he was. The reason why the United States assassinated Muammar Gaddafi is not because he was a dictator like they claim. If that was the case, then North Korea would be off the map by now. Cuba would have got X'd out by now. Hell, pick one. There's lots of reasons, lots of evidence that it wasn't because he was a dictator. The reason why they decided to eliminate Muammar Gaddafi off of the planet is because he had proposed that Africa, first of all, be one political state, and two, that what they would go to is a gold standard, meaning that African people would use whatever resources were up underneath their soil and leverage that as their capital, as their money, in order to enter the marketplace. Meaning that would have effectively crashed the dollar, and the euro and the pound, all that ish would have went down fast. And so they killed Muammar Gaddafi because
the African Union was moving to do exactly that. So let's, for instance, if you're a place like Ghana, that is one of the richest gold places in the world, you wouldn't even have to extract the gold. Scientists know how much gold you have by looking at it through technology,
radar imaging.
Yes, radar imaging. Thank you, Theo.
Radar imaging. Yeah.
So based upon that, what's the wealth of your country of Africa would have been determined by. And because they were looking to do that, they killed him. So we know that it's the same reason why they took down Oklahoma back in the 1930s. So the point here that I think it's important for us to understand, in what I would say, Shay, Jay, to your question, is that to Lethal's point, we have to politically align ourselves first. We have to understand that we're not capitalist, nor should we be pursuing capitalism, because it's extractive in nature. By nature, it is extractive. There's no people that on this planet that understand that better than Black people, as we were extracted literally from the continent of Africa in order to fuel capitalism. And so we have to become politically aligned. And once we become politically aligned, we become economically aligned, and so forth and so on.
Everything that you're saying is like directly to the point of what Antonio Moore is doing with the ADOS movement. The attempt is to align us under a common, understanding, right? It is to separate out Africans from American descendants of slavery. It's not to say Black folks as a whole, right? It's to say that we have a specific political and legal claim to reparations based on us as having a unified identity. And so you're spot on with that. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Lethal. Go ahead.
Oh, Lethal, go ahead.
All right, I interrupted one of y'all. My
let me
say that we need to, as a people, right? Politics is the business of quid pro quo, and it is about power. So we need to align our power, and we need to understand that it is a business that is about quid pro quo, and we can't allow our emotions, right, or what we may want to do socially, interfere. It's business. Yeah, Theo, I'm sorry about that, bro.
Yeah. No. So check it out. I'm talking about taking advantage of the moment. The wealth transfer is going on right now, and it's a big one. And there's another wealth transfer that we need to be talking about, which is reparations, a transfer of the wealth that we are owed back into the hands of the American descendants of the enslaved. And there's never been more political will behind anything that looks like that right now. Never. The Black Lives Matter protests have been in all 50 states and 18 other countries, making it the largest street political protests in the history of the world. There has been these riots, the drastic changes in policy. There's never been momentum like we have now. And I'm wondering, because, was it Robert Johnson that suggested a $14 trillion reparations plan with $370,000 going to each and every Black American, right? That to me seems like the fight, because it's just like what Jice said. Without opportunity, without capital, can you take advantage of the opportunities in an opportunity zone? See what I'm saying? Like, can you reinvest without Nipsey Hussle money? Does that make sense? And so I'm just looking at the landscape right now. And if there's never been more will behind it right now, then that needs to be how we push with some of these technological, these financial ideas in mind that Jice was talking about. And then with that, you create a new system within the system. So one of the things that I investigated was community currencies. These are currencies that are not counterfeit. So this ain't about printing dollars, that's fake dollars. It's about people agreeing on what value is and then exchanging within themselves, almost like a Craigslist situation, right? You go on Craigslist, you set the price with the person and you do it. Well, imagine a whole new set of dollars. Now, we've seen this in for example, frequent flyer miles are a set of alternative currencies. Does that make sense? If you play these online games like World of Warcraft and shit like that, they got currencies within that, right? And so basically those currencies can have new rules, can have new laws. There doesn't have to be any interest. There doesn't have to be any debt attached to it. These rules can be rewritten. If we have the resources, the physical resources, the things to buy, sell, and trade, so that we set new rules so that we don't have to participate in capitalism, even though we may get them from a capitalist currency. Does that make sense? I think that might be the thing that do longest term, because not even gold is valuable without people. I think I said this last episode. There's really only 3 currencies in the world: creativity, connection, and coercion, right? Because if Muammar Gaddafi did what he did, the Western powers used coercion, bombs, secret agents, assassins, the whole thing like that. When the European came to America, they came with guns. They were like, I got guns, I'll get the gold, but I got guns, right? See what I'm saying? So that's really all there really is to it. A push for reparations in a certain way could actually have us set up in a way that we could create our own microeconomy and rewrite the rules so that we're not always cutthroat competing against folks who have a 400-year financial advantage on us. Does that make sense? That's an idea. I'm throwing it out there to see if it has legs, if it makes sense to somebody else. If there's something that I'm not seeing, y'all let me know.
It makes sense to me, Theo, but I would add that if we're going to talk about politics, and if we agree that politics is about power, then you need to be able to project that power. And you also need to protect your power. You understand what I'm saying? And one of the things that makes, America what it is on the global scale, global market, is its ability to, one, project power, and to protect its power or protect its interests. These are all the things that come with that type of understanding of wealth transfer. And then once you have that wealth, right, how do you prevent someone else from coming along and taking it, destroying what you are developing with regards to economics?
That's a very powerful question, brother. There needs to be an investment in the military infrastructure, which is the thing, like the actual Black protection military infrastructure, not just Black Panther looking stuff, but like heavy artillery, tanks, aircraft. One of the first things that Nelson Mandela did, a lot of people called Nelson Mandela a sellout because of how he did his Rainbow Nation. But I'll say one smart thing that Nelson Mandela did is as soon as he became the president, he immediately purchased aircraft carriers. He purchased not only airplanes, submarines, and tanks, but he also purchased the means to manufacture it. South Africa was one of the first places to manufacture their own weapons. Now, there's been some countries that now manufacture their own weapons. Nigeria has a drone program. Ghana is investing in body armor. Somalia actually has its own rifles that they retrofitted from Soviet rifles and figured out the machinery to create it. But I think what you're saying, Lethal, is a very important thing, because coercion is one of the natural currencies. It just is what it is. And that's what this Jack move is all about. And that's what keeps the banksters protected, because they have the ability to not only buy the police force, but leverage their capital to create laws to protect them with that police force. So it's a very, very powerful thing that you said, brother, and it cannot be overstated.
Yeah, but here's the thing about that, Theo. Black folks live here. So we'll tear this motherfucker up. And we're just about 2 miles from downtown right now, right? So it ain't like, where you drop a bomb on somebody else. We know where you live, homie. Like, we know where Cherry Creek is. We know where Beverly Hills is. Compton and Cherry Creek, Compton and Beverly Hills ain't that far from each other. So we have to understand that part of our defense is the fact that we are embedded inside of the belly of the beast itself. And so, and we've proven that. That's what these rebellions prove, right? Is that if we shut this down, y'all don't get to, if we don't get to play ball, y'all don't get to play ball neither.
So here's the thing, what you're saying, like part of it with being embedded in the body of the beast, right? Like we're in here, right? And what I think we have to build that. We have to build some coercion power. Although how we use that when we are in the belly of the beast is one thing, right? And we do need to look at those different types of currencies. But I think one of the things that we are missing, and this is always like, I always have to come from this historical past because it's difficult to see where we're going when we have no idea what we've done, what hasn't worked, why it is the way it is, how we got this way. And so when I'm saying that we are having this wealth transfer, like I don't want to deviate off of what this means in terms of a wealth transfer and how they are utilizing the current currency that everyone recognizes as being a powerhouse currency in a way that is diverting these resources away from us and being utilized to purchase up the physical resources that are essentially, going back to what Letho said, are inalienable rights, right? Like it is in our inalienable rights to breathe, to have access to water, to have access to a place to live. Like those things are our rights. And what we're seeing is the commoditization of all of those rights, and how they are doing this is because there is power in the way that we see the dollar. So when we don't even recognize or understand how these other currencies can exist, right? And you saw that with like people being skeptical of, say, like Bitcoin. But part of that is because inside of our history, they are not talking about different currencies that have come and gone, right? So for most of us as Americans, we've never really seen or acknowledged currencies that have disappeared or are no longer valid or whatever that looks like. So most of us don't even really remember how the euro came about and like centralized the European currencies. So, as I'm looking at everything that's happening, and so I talked about those in terms of the opportunity zones is where I saw the start of the wealth transfer that I saw. So obviously that by the time, that means that it's been in motion, right? This is just what I saw. When you look at that, the opportunity zones were already kind of that government-backed and private corporation-backed land grab. Then you have these tax cuts that just came in. So prior to coronavirus, you had all of these multi-billion dollar, like big-time corporations who got major tax cuts under the Trump administration. So on top of all the profits that they got, they had to really pay nothing back into the infrastructure, or very little back into the infrastructure of the U.S. economy. Mm-hmm. And then coronavirus hit and they got bailed out.
Let's talk about that.
The stock market was the highest it had ever been. So they have not only a resource grab, but they've also accumulated a significant amount of the dollars. So while we're seeing unemployment rise and we're seeing people go bankrupt and we're seeing small companies be wiped out, you have these multi-billion-dollar companies who were boo-hoo crying about the fact that they cannot sustain, that they need to lay off all these people because they couldn't survive. Coronavirus for America hit hard in March, April, May, June. In 90 days, 1 quarter, you have multi-billion-dollar industries that couldn't figure out how to sustain, but yet you have bailout, or you have stimulus money that still hasn't made it into the average American's hands. So you have multi-billion-dollar companies who have CEOs with all these corporate packages and all of these assets. And what we saw in the stock market was, we thought the stock market was going down, but the stock market is already rebounded, and the stock market is already recovered the losses that it made over this first quarter of 2020. So if you were privy enough to be invested inside of the stock market, you straight.
Yeah. Guys, you're hitting on so many.
If you're in a big corporation, you're not out of there. So it's the regular American people that are shouldering that. But here's the thing. And I mentioned this before, and I'm sorry, Shay, I saw you say something, but just let me try and finish this, wrap up this point. They have passed out cash like it was nothing, right? Trillions of dollars popped up out of nowhere overnight by the sign of a pen. So what are our dollars actually backed by? What are the dollars actually backed by? Is there any plan, any way, any idea around America ever coming out of the debt that we're under, right? There's not.
There's not, yo.
There's not, because what the dollars are backed by. So here's the thing. Ray Dalio, who, if you aren't familiar with who Ray Dalio is, basically, top hedge fund guy, like super rich, super smart money person, okay? That's Ray Dalio. You can look him up. He has this entire piece that is out talking about how the devaluation of the currency starts to lead to a switch in currency. I assert that there will be this huge grab of natural resources that are a part of our inalienable rights that are going to be obtained and held by not even the wealthy class, the super uber wealthy class, while we are still acknowledging the strength and the power of the dollar, which is continuously being devalued while they are just printing money like no other. They literally turned around and just printed trillions of dollars and handed it out like it was candy to anybody and everybody.
Right.
Started talking about, I mean, there's stimulus package ideas that are going around talking about making people, have six figures worth of income. You, your spouse, your child is a shut the fuck up. They just want us to be appeased, right? And if you don't know what appeased means, it's the process of just being cool. Like, let's just give you what you need so you just be all right. So they're trying to hand out money. They're trying to give over things. And that's why I say, like, we have to be more vigilant at this. And we have to really, to graphically put it the way that they did our brother George, we have to keep our foot on their fucking neck to no avail. We cannot let up at all if we have any hopes before there's another 1 to 3 generations before we see another time like this come by have this type of opportunity. We cannot let up at all because they keep giving us tokens. You hear, and I'm not even going to go on a whole rant about it again, but you can go and check out my live. I talked about what Bank of America. Bank of America said, we're going to give you $1 billion. Whoop-de fucking do, Bank of America. You have $1.8 trillion under assets, which means you are literally giving us 0.5% of your dollars, because you look at the Black community like a fucking charity case. And that's the thing that starts to get me. We are not a charity case. There's nowhere in any part of our history that Black Americans said, give me a handout. We said, we built this country. You took us and forced us to, and we built it and you gave us nothing. And all this time later, you still give us nothing. So I equated it to somebody walking down the street, accidentally dropping some change out their back pocket and being like, oh shit, you're not even finna stop and pick it up. That's what Bank of America just said. It's a slap in the face. And we're so easily appeased by it. $1.8 trillion. $2 trillion would have, $2 billion would have been 1% of that. And they gave us half of that. And said, photo op front,
there we go.
Look how great we are. And you got Black folks who now want to move their bank accounts over into so they can have more assets.
Jice, you're really hitting on something here. Because the tokenism that we are subject to is a part of a cycle. It is a very dangerous cycle because it always looks new. They always rebrand it every generation, but it's actually the same thing. And since we're talking about 7 generations and what it's going to look like for our descendants when it comes to these financial instruments being used against us, there's a force that's on the horizon that nobody's really talking about, but is already starting to show up. That's going to we're going to be forced to create a new economy, whether we like it or not, whether we think we have the creativity to do it or not. And that's because the force on the horizon is called technological unemployment. We are about to be fully replaced by artificial intelligence, especially when, and I need you to look this up because I was about to do a TED Talk about this. This is what I wanted it to be about, but I couldn't do it. It's called quantum computing. Quantum computing. It's going to make digital look like analog, and digital made, you feel me? And digital made analog look like the Stone Age. The amount of intelligence they're going to be able to do and put into these machines is going to be godlike. And it's right around the corner. Technological employment is already, and you're seeing this where it comes to, you go to the grocery store, there's automatic checkouts. You go to the bank, there's ATM machines. These are all jobs that used to be done by people that will be done by machines in time. If they get the robots good enough, then they will have a server that's like a literal freaking drone, bring out your shit. They're already using flying drones to deliver packages. They're working on self-drivable semi-trucks right now that will likely disemploy, you name it. A lot of the investing algorithms used to be actual physical investors on Wall Street. Like now they have computers that can literally calculate the freaking projected earnings of a certain company and come up with an algorithm that you should invest in these companies right here. That used to be a broker. Travelocity does now what a travel broker used to do. You see what I'm saying? And so, and so technological unemployment is going to be a factor that literally does not allow for jobs to exist. So people have to figure out, and by the way, the ones that are going to be replaced first are the low-skilled labor. Those of us who already are in the working class already. You see what I'm saying? And so this is something that within the next 7 generations is going to happen. And that's going to affect how this wealth is being transferred. And so if we don't start planting seeds right now and figuring, and first of all, start taking technological unemployment seriously.
Yeah.
If it ain't the Mexicans coming for your job, it's the cyborgs, all right?
Boom.
Cyborgs coming for your goddamn jobs. And when they get here, they'll do it 10 times better than you because they don't get tired. They don't need sick days, ain't no maternity leave, ain't none of that for them. You see what I'm saying? So how do we create an economy based on all these data points? When we factor in whatever data points, and I'm so grateful for Jice because she lives in this world, but we need to factor that in too, because if we don't, we're going to be left in the lurch before we create a safety net. So I want to put that out there. That's a very important factor, along with all the shit. And then also murder hornets are in America. We also have murder hornets. So that's the thing.
No, Theo, I think that was a huge thing.
Don't forget about the murder.
Murder hornets, right?
It's not an apocalypse without murder hornets, y'all.
Look, so the point of this podcast is not really for us to sit over here and tell y'all nothing, right? We talking, we going down the rabbit hole, right? You got the red pill alert if you joined us at the top of the hour. But I think it's important that we start to think about this because this question was posed to me. Actually, the catalyst that I have been thinking about going live and I hadn't been going. I've been trying to be more intentional about the content that I put out. But the question that had kind of got me to pushed me over there was, what should we be doing, right? And I don't want to try and put out like a solution as though, we have some structural way that we've done something. But what I will say is that we've got to begin to shift the way that we are thinking. I can't remember who framed it or who said it or where I saw the post, but I saw somebody say, in 3 months' time, right? You basically removed the entertainment from the Black community, right? And from everybody, but from the Black, folks, right? Sports wasn't on. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't go do all these after school activities that we we got kids doing 17, 11 after school activities, right? All this stuff that we do and that make us so busy, we can't focus on getting free. And so now you then took that away. Everybody's inside. Everybody got an opportunity to think, and we're starting to see what's going on. And what I will say is that they have lulled us to sleep with this, with the amount of information that comes our way, with the amount of entertainment, with the amount of distractive things that have nothing to do with our freedom, mostly because we are in a place of comfortability. And so what I will say is that the next thing that we need to do, like now that you're a little bit awake, now that you're wiping the sleep out of your eye, we have to stop buying bullshit, right? And if you're in a position to be able to buy bullshit, go ahead and buy it, I guess. But we need to be purchasing some of these resources while the American dollar that they're handing out like liquid candy is still, applicable in some kind of way, right? So like there are people out here who are living their whole best life and don't own a lick of property, own nothing. Don't own their car, don't own a house, don't own an investment property, and don't own a fucking stock. You own nothing. We got to stop that. So, the one thing that I will say is that if you are a person who is able to continue to feed your family, you're able to pay your rent, and you're able, you're still working or whatever it is that you're doing, start diverting some of these dollars towards either into Black communities, Black banks, Black industries, right? Or industries that we need to be in, and start buying up things that matter. Start buying
appreciating your value.
We trying to build a solar farm right now. That's what I'm trying. I got 70 acres. We're trying to figure out how to put a solar farm on there. We're trying to buy access to things, right? We have property, we have stock, we have stuff that builds or that matters, right? So if all hell broke loose today, I can pack up and drive a few hours and I have some land that I own that I can camp out on. Some of y'all don't know what y'all finna do if all hell broke loose today. We in the belly of the beast. What happens if that protest comes 2 blocks, 2 miles down the road? Where are we going? What are we doing? So I would assert that we have to start thinking about assets and start diverting our dollars there. And also, we're a very impatient people. We already been in here for a week, and you got people wondering when are we going to stop protesting? Like it ain't been that long yet, guys.
Right.
Talking about people saving the type of money that they need to buy assets. They feel like, well, that's going to take me forever to save. Well, shit, get started. I don't know how to help y'all with that mindset.
Jice, you keep saying something, and I think it's important that we make a distinction here, because I think you're making an assumption that most of our listeners aren't following. You keep saying, what are we going to do? We can't afford this, or we need to buy that, blase skippy. That's a political statement. Because in European culture, there is no we own as a what you're saying is that the collective needs to own it. And the people who came up with the idea of 7 generations, there was no personal ownership. You didn't buy land. The land belonged. It was part and parcel of what my man Lethal was saying earlier. It was part and parcel of you being a human being on this planet. I think it's very dangerous to get into the idea of ownership of those things. I think it's better to understand that we can be keepers of these assets, but it has to happen, as you keep saying, in a we context. Because an individual owning 500 acres or 5 million acres does the collective no good whatsoever. And so we have to make sure that we start thinking as far as collective, for lack of a better word, collective ownership of resources, which of course is what we're talking about is socialism, right? We're talking about a socialist economy. And I think that's an important distinction for us to make.
And thank you, because my platform is built on cooperative economics. So you're right. I made that assumption that everybody knew when I say we, that I mean we.
Well, I mean, we come from a Western culture, so we got Jay-Z and Beyonce, and everybody's trying to be the next Jay-Z, the next Beyonce, but who's trying to be the next Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? Who's trying to be the next Rosewood? Who's trying to be the next, where there's a collective ownership of the resources. And that's one of the biggest problems in the Black community, is not the lack of money, it's the lack of wisdom and the lack of unification of us working together for ownership. Everybody wants to own their own. Listen, most Negroes got 3 TVs in one house. Like,
that's real.
Come on now. 3 TVs
you don't have to call people
in one house?
That's all. Not necessary. No, I think we're hitting on some great things. What is something that we should be asking for? I heard a lot about us being a token, about us just accepting what they're giving to us. What should we be asking for during this climate where we feel like maybe government's listening more than ever, maybe communities listening more than ever? What should we be asking?
No. We shouldn't be asking anything.
Demanding it.
We should be telling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we should realize and understand that, to Brother Soul's point, right? In the belly of the beast. Right? We're in the belly of the beast, which makes us dangerous. You understand what I'm saying? So we don't need to ask for anything, right? We need to be COVID.
Yeah.
We need to be the virus. You understand what I'm saying? And how we do that is we understand our value. We understand our own collective wealth. You understand what I'm saying? And we make an agreement to utilize that collective wealth to advance our political agenda.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Looking strategically in the belly of the beast, act as a virus. What that means is, okay, fine. You don't want to do business with us, as I said in our first episode, then we won't do business with you because you need us more than we need you. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, think about this. I grew up on welfare with a poor mom and a poor family in the projects of Brooklyn, Crown Heights, big ups, right? You understand what I'm saying? So I know that it is in me to be able, right, to live without all these fancy schmancy things. I don't need, and I can be a smart consumer. You understand what I'm saying? And that would piss off, for example, right? If we decided, you know what, we want to go to this bank over here and deny this bank access to our assets. You understand what I'm saying? To teach that bank a lesson.
Listen,
I'm saying? But that would involve something that Jice spoke to in her article, right? We need to understand that we have to stop being afraid of being uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And two more points. I am probably going to piss off a large, vast majority of our non-existent community, because we ain't a community any damn way, right?
Colony.
We need to stop hope, praying, and dreaming. Bottom line. Because if you walk your ass into a grocery store with a pocket full of hopes, prayers, and dreams, you're going to wind up like the brother George Floyd. You understand what I'm saying? Because you're not going to go into nobody's business talking about, I got a bunch of pocket full of hopes, prayers, and dreams and whatnot, and think you're going to be able to do business. Bottom line. So stop this praying, stop this dreaming, and start acting. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And the last point I want to make is this, right? Learn to start understanding politics. It is business, and it is the business of power. Power, power, power. And realize what our power is. You see what I'm saying? I'm not wearing this because it's fancy. I'm wearing this because I'm saying fuck you.
Right. Listen. That's a powerful thing, because when I listen to Lethal, what I hear is the raw self-determination of our people that made us survive through all these things, right? We are a resilient people. I said that if I was against Black folks, I'd be scared of us too. Because you done did all this to me and I came out crip walking and playing jazz. I'd be terrified. It's like that scene in Rocky. You're not gonna keep getting back up. What the fuck you doing? Right? So that's how I feel about us. I think that you hit on something about the banks, Lethal, and what you said was that we can choose which banks that we want to support. I think that if we were to ask for, or we were to demand to leverage reparations out of this situation, there's 5 or 6 main infrastructural things that we need as a community. I said this on my podcast yesterday. I'm gonna bring it here, right? So that the wealth transfer can work for us. Number 1, banking institutions. A stimulus to One United Bank. Have them open up branches in every major Black community center, or should we say colony, and have it turn into a community center with low to no interest loans for Black entrepreneurs, and having them have the space to actually build a business. So banking is one. The next one has to be education. Education, we literally have to teach our folks our own stuff. So there are all these small Black charter schools. Find the one with the best operational model and create an entire school system nationwide for Black children, for the descendants of the enslaved, and create the funding behind that, right? The next thing is going to be food production, i.e. grocery stores, right? So that's where the 40 acres come. I don't need 40 acres of mule. I need 40 acres and a big ass tractor and some education on how to grow these seeds, right? You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things that needs to happen, and a place to distribute that food so that we can end these food deserts. The 4th thing that needs to happen is, going to be, before I get to the 5th one, I forgot what the fuck it is. Okay, I'm just going to go to the 5th one. And of course, it's defense. Like we have to figure out a way to leverage defense. And there needs to be dollars put behind that, whether it was training these young gangsters. If you're an ex-felon or a felon, but you able-bodied, and we saw that you were in jail for a non-violent drug abuse, go ahead and release them boys and train them up to be the military force. You see what I'm saying? Make sure that they got what they need to be and need to have. You know what I mean? These are these major institutions in tech. So we also need tech. Absolutely. We need to actually have the ability to control the technology. So whether it's those solar panels that Jice was referring to, a lot of us need to be trained on STEM. Right now, I haven't told anybody this, but right now, I'm literally training to be a CompTIA A+ certified computer engineer. Like I'm literally doing that right now. Like I'm an artist, bro. Like I draw pictures and write poems and shit. That's not my fucking strong suit, man. You know what I'm saying? But I'm teaching my brain these things because I realize I need to understand STEM. I need to understand what routers and freaking, you know what I'm saying? All of this stuff, modems, all of these things. I coding, like I wrote my first binary code the other day, right? I thought I never do that. But so I'm training myself to do that, right? So we need to actually have that kind of mindset and control these things, because once we do that, we'll have the power to create our own matrix once we take the scraps from this matrix and build a better one.
Thank you, Theo.
Your portfolio, Theo.
Yeah. Now it's not
That's
just
how we do it.
I write code too. I can write code and poems.
we're getting to the near of the show, and I know we can talk about this forever because this is something that we're all passionate about and we've all talked about on a different level. Before we close out, I just want to give So and Jice one last moment, something real quick for the audience. During this wealth transfer, Jice, you've given them bits and bits. So you've given them some bits. Give them one last thing that they can do to start thinking differently through a 7-generational lens.
Organize.
Love it.
I love
Simple.
it. Right.
Jice.
We gotta be Black first. I know that's tough for some of us, but we gotta be Black first. I just, to bring that back up to, almost at the top of the conversation, what H said, we have to be able to see ourselves at least in some form or a level of an identity, so that we can begin to fight for the things that we need inside of or within that identity. And when we find so many different ways to be fractured, I think that's the thing that hurts us the most. And I say, we gotta be able to find the places that we can agree on. Like, let's start there, right? Like, there's a lot to hash out, but let's start there. We kind of walk into conversations looking for where we disagree, and looking for the division. Can we start with where we agree, right? And start building from there. So, so the conversations are going to continue because they're important.
Absolutely. This is not the end of the conversations like this. And if you tuned in today and liked anything you heard, or just if it stretched your mindset, please share this with somebody else. We're 7 Generations Black. This is just our 3rd podcast, but there's so much more to come. And I hope that you take this and apply it to your life, because the whole goal is to at some point become a community and to not just be surviving, but to be thriving. So, like we always say, hustle for the next 7 generations to come, because they deserve a better life. Thank you for listening to 7 Generations Black. We are your new podcast for all things Black. Come back and visit us next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We appreciate you.